right, welcome to Shop Talks. First off, I should tell you I am not Paul Radulis, and this is not
Neither
Paul
am I.
Radulis. Paul could not make it. I'm sorry, but I know something about art direction myself, so Tim is going to interview me as a substitute. If you get up and leave, I'm good. But my company does a lot of high-end art, and we're going to work it this way. I want to thank the sponsors, Los Angeles Apparel and AlphaBroder is the main sponsors, making this all free. Stalls, Transfer Express, LET Apparel, Hirsch, Howard, and Lane 7. I'm from In Kitchen. Check out inkitchen.com. Check out our YouTube channel. This video and all the ones this weekend and the ones from Long Beach and the ones that'll happen in Fort Worth are all up there. There's a lot of free information. Our aim is always to have accurate information. So I'm with my friend here, Tim Gibson. He's from outside of Austin, Texas, where he has a small shop. He's also been a production manager at major facilities in the West Coast, and he's been a national rep for Next Level, Bella, and Hanes. So he is a garment expert.
Garmento, as they say. Yeah, so Rick Roth. For those who don't know Rick Roth, he's a legendary guy in our industry, so kind of excited to ask him some questions for my own knowledge, specifically relating to artwork. I think for anybody who gets in this industry, that's the hardest thing to kind of figure out. It's pretty easy to figure out how to hot press or screen print even, but the artwork is always a challenge, right? So
Always a challenge.
yeah. So I guess, question-wise, how did you address that when you first started your business? How did you deal with artwork?
So we dealt with it with fanaticism, actually. So our initial thing at Mirror Image was halftone reproduction. So at the time, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, people would use just black halftones to reproduce photographs. So we had an opportunity to print some museum pieces, but they were highly demanding customers. So the first one was a famous photographer, Lisette Modell. We did this photograph. We reproduced it using 4 screens instead of 1.
CMYK?
Black and grays. And then we separated the famous photograph of the guy kissing the woman in the streets of Paris. It's called Kiss at the Hotel de Ville, or it really means City Hall. But that famous photograph's like the most romantic photograph ever kind of thing.
Yeah.
We had to actually send the sample to Robert Doisneau in France to get it approved. Yeah. So we separated that 19 times at a time when films were expensive.
Did you do that yourself in-house, or
we
go
did
to
that. No,
Coudray or Serigraph or one of those guys?
No. So basically, we separated it to 5 screens, and got the tritones and stuff are very difficult to reproduce, and we got an incredible reproduction of that actually that he approved, and we learned so much from it. It's like when you go to the moon, you also discover tang and silicone caulk. It was kind of like that. So besides the solving that one photo, we learned to eventually what became simulated process separations, which other people, Dave Gardner was doing on a separately, but so we went from that, and then we started doing what I call technique printing, like high density ink that Mike Beckman invented, using thick stencils and thick inks, and then eventually we put those together and we came up with very realistic,
like the
special
tape
effects.
Yeah, that one design that had the tape on it.
So I brought a couple samples here. So, for example, that looks like chenille, but it's actually
simulated chenille.
Yes, it is
amazing.
all printed.
Yep.
And then I have other samples that look like tape or leather, etc. Pam, you can hand the other ones out, actually, if you want. You want to hand the other ones out?
The tape one is the one that stands out for me, because I remember when I first met you, I saw that, and that was amazing.
But one thing about special effects that's kind of interesting, so it's both actual dimension and visual dimension. There's drop shadows and stuff. So it's the combination that makes it look realistic. The other is to pick the right substrate. So that's one part of art direction I think that's overlooked a lot of times. So that chenille one, for example, looks pretty good on a t-shirt. And I put it there because I don't want to carry around sweatshirts. But if it's on a sweatshirt, it looks more believable because you would put that type of decoration on a sweatshirt so that when you see it, it would be more believable.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. So when you have a client that comes in and they show you their art or their vision, or how do you go about like guiding them into the proper substrate or fabrication or silhouette, what have you?
So I usually ask them a range of questions. I mean, if you really have a big customer and you want to do a good job, you really need to know everything. So what's the demographics of who you're selling to? You're selling to teenage, girls? Are you selling to old white guys? Are you giving the shirt away? What's the price point you're going to sell it at? That would determine whether you're going to pick a shirt that's like fitted or you're going to pick a shirt that's more boxy. Everybody doesn't have the same perception. Some people think those thin, ring
4.3
the 4.3 ring spun cotton shirts are really nice and soft. Other people think they're cheap ass crappy shirts. Like it's really in the mind of the beholder.
Matter of perception.
Yes. So you ask those kind of questions. You ask if they have, bigger companies will have a technical whole thing of what you can and can't do. A lot of that's
a tech pack
or they'll have what's the word for it?
Brand guide.
Brand guidelines, which often ruin the project. You have to have the logo intact in all its colors, and by the time you do that, you can't do anything else. So the ones that are a little more flexible or realistic are easier to work with. So and then you get the assets that they have. Do they have a logo they use? Do they have typeface they use?
Pantone colors.
Yeah, and you work from there. So from there, then, I'll give an example. So this definitely has to be passed around. But this is a really cool technique that you can't tell from me holding it up. If you use special glasses, it's three-dimensional.
Oh, okay.
It's anybody out there that looks at this that doesn't say, wow, I'll be shocked. However, it doesn't look like much without the glasses. Yeah. So there's only...
How did you come up with this? Was it a project for a specific...
Well, this one, Hanes, I don't have the glasses they had. So what we did with them was the glasses were branded. The shirts, they didn't really care if people wore them. They're sending them out to the showroom. So what we wanted was when people got it in the showroom to go, wow, and show everyone in the office, as opposed to we wanted them to wear them around. So it kind of works on that level. If you want someone to read what's on the shirt, you make a 3D image on the shirt, everybody is going to show everyone around them. The only other way that technique works is like a bar, and you would have the people wear the shirts, and then you give out the glasses.
That's smart.
Yeah, but
or a movie premiere or something.
So that's where you kind of get art direction. It's not really like I don't have to be an illustrator to come up with that. I have to be an art director, and that really
conceptual.
Yes. And then the other part of that particular one was they had a theme of like monster movies and old-timey, and they were going to come around with a Godzilla suit at a show, so the kind of a 3D technique worked with their whole enterprise, if you will.
Yeah. I'm curious, because this is something that comes up for me all the time. So how do I, as a screen printer and not an art guy, when you talk about art direction, how do you communicate to an actual graphic art or whoever's going to do the art? Like you have the concept, that's the director in you. What's the best way to communicate that to the actual graphic artist?
All right, the best way to communicate it is to find a graphic artist that's familiar with t-shirts. I cannot overstate that. It's otherwise you're going to get, I get high-end art people sending unprintable art. And when I say unprintable, either it's physically impossible or it's too expensive. So your typical crap that you get from somebody that's like a great artist is they'll show something that wraps around the shirt or goes up and over the shoulder, and they'll say, I never saw that before, or I saw it on Affliction or some crazy shirt. Yeah. And then you have to point out that, Affliction did like 20, 20,000 of them, and they did them in Colombia where they could do them, one every 5 minutes.
Printed panels.
Yeah, exactly. And that you don't see it because it's too expensive. That means that you would have different screens for every size shirt and all kinds of limitations. So that's not creative. It's kind of ignorant, if you will. So another thing like that is even your average artist, it's so easy to put a blend in. So everybody puts blends in everything, right? If you're doing a Facebook page, that's great. If you're doing a T-shirt, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, we've got things that have like 5 blends in them. And they're like, yeah, you could print them, but why would you print them? They don't make a good T-shirt, and they're not economical to print. So you're going to get a bad result and be expensive. So I think that's like a really bad direction to go. So that's why someone that works in shirts all the time, as opposed to print media or internet media, is going to always do a better job for you.
Yeah. And then this is another challenge for me, is picking ink colors that go well with the garment color. Like, is there an easier way to do that other than, hey, that black looks good on everything, or white looks good on black always? Like, if you want to do something more interesting, like say you have a gold T-shirt and like instead of just tone on tone or something, like what's the good way to get through that?
Google.
Yeah,
I mean, look for stuff that is in that color of shirt, maybe, and if I have a customer and like I'm having trouble figuring out what they want for art, have them give you examples. Have them do Google searches for like green shirts and find out what color ink looks good if you're doing it yourself, or have them look through and show me some things that you like. And I think that's a good way forward a lot of times.
Yeah, so it sounds like art consultation basically is the key to your point. All the questions, asking all the right questions.
Yep.
And
then even after you think you know what the customer wants, you don't jump off the cliff. You kind of slowly make your way down the cliff. DTG is or even transfers, but DTG in particular is a great tool. Like most screen printers I know that have DTG, whatever they hoped it would do, one thing they're really glad is to do samples for customers. It'll at least tell you size. Maybe the reproduction won't be exactly the same as screen printing, but you'll see if orange really works on that turquoise shirt. Yeah. And so it's a lot cheaper way than setting a bunch of screens up and having the print rejected. So that's a good tool. We always do mock-ups. We have a little provision also. Don't look at it just on your phone, please. I love the people that say they want it a 1/4 inch higher that looked at it on their phone where the whole shirt was a 1/4 inch big. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. Do you have like when you send a mock-up, does it say this is just for mock-up purposes only?
Yeah, we have some language. I notice a lot of people steal our language, actually.
I might steal it myself.
Yeah, go for it, man. Go for it. So I think, actually, another piece about sizing, let's talk about that, is so you take the kind of ink the person wants. Do they want plastisol, water base? You have to take into consideration whether they... Like people will say, how big should I make the art? Well, it depends. No one wants to hear that, but it does depend.
Yeah, I agree.
There are certain images that if you make them giant and they're like very, it's all fill, it's going to look atrocious and feel atrocious, especially if you're using plastisol. So you can't really say there is a perfect size, I would say.
There's got to be like I use like 12 inches or 11 and a half, depending, this way. But there's got to be, and then even like a left chest, isn't there like a 3.5 by 3. Like, what's the standard?
Yeah, there are
And
standards.
I know there's obviously,
but
variables.
what about the one where the logo goes up here a little bit, and is it from there to there, or is it only from the visual part? So it's not as easy as you think. A lot of times we will just print out in black and white the image, cut it out with scissors roughly, put it on a shirt, stand back 10 feet, look at it. I mean, as long as I've done this, a mock-up isn't good enough sometimes. You have to see it on a shirt, and that's a trick to see how it's going to look. Then maybe even print it out in color, tape it to the shirt. You get some idea if the size looks good.
That's a good idea. It's better than burning a screen. And
Yeah, you're looking at your phone like this. It's not the same as looking at a, space where you're not invading someone's privacy and looking at it, which is what's going to go.
Yep.
I think you realize other stuff too. Like a lot of people think it's very clever to put something related on the front and the back, except you don't see the front and the back at the same time like you do in that mock-up. So what looks clever on that, in real life, you're looking at the front when someone approaches you. You're looking at only the front on a display. So some of that stuff's not quite as clever when you see it in real life.
Yeah. What about, and I think this is maybe even a topic at one of your other ink kitchens, but what do you think about AI, like AI artwork? Because it's all the rage right now, and it's pretty amazing, to be honest. But what do you think the longevity? It's going to change the game.
It's going to change the game. It's definitely going to be a tool. It's not going to change everything. Everybody always thinks
Still got to print it.
Yeah, it has to be printable. Problem with a lot of it now, it's copyright violation, and that's going to be an issue. And artificial intelligence will help hunt down those copyright violations as well as make them for you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a new step. I noticed that there's some new artificial intelligence platforms that are specifically don't do copyright violation. They don't draw from that material.
Yeah.
So it'll be a tool. You need all the tools you can use to come up with the best stuff.
Yeah, there's that app Lenza, I think, that does AI. Like if you put a picture in it, and it'll spit out all these different AI images. But what about? I'm trying to think of some other artwork questions that are relevant to the group here. Anybody have any questions for Rick as it relates to art direction or anything like that? Anybody have any questions?
I had a couple of other samples too, where what you think of. So this is a very soft shirt, thin. So we did a discharge print to show off the shirt. So that
using negative space.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so this has no underprint. So for that, you have to know that this particular shirt will discharge. All shirts don't discharge. Only cotton shirts discharge. Certain colors almost never discharge, like royal blue or Kelly green. No, red does sometimes.
Does it?
So it's a great choice of ink for a thin, soft cotton shirt. It does. If the person right from the start wanted a 50-50 shirt, that's a bad choice of ink. Sometimes it's more than just the print. So this particular print is the Minnesota Twins had a brand new stadium, and this actually contains the dirt from the field.
Oh, wow.
They actually sent us the real dirt. And it explains it on the shirt, but the other thing that added to the whole project is we put a hang tag that showed like the excavation tool and explained all of it, so people knew they were actually getting a piece of the field in their shirt.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
What's that do to your screens? You better make tough screens, man.
80.
Because it's a little
mesh.
gritty. Well, we sifted the dirt first.
Wow, that's a good idea.
But so it was the whole package. The hang tag was a necessary part of it that time. All right, let's have some questions. See if anybody has questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Art questions, art direction questions?
Nobody?
So I don't have really any questions about sort of developing the concepts. I'm tracking with you there, having that dialogue with the customer and trying to really feel them out, reach what they need. I do have some questions about output devices when you create something, and you've mentioned this several times, and it's important. Don't create something that's unprintable,
Right.
And so, in particular, the way that things have changed, say, over the past, 20 years, when it comes to output devices, you go from the sort of the Zante laser printer on myriad film, et cetera, to nowadays, it seems like there's no vendor here that talks about outputting separations, the output device or the substrate, right? And so what has been, if just a couple minutes sort of like history thing of, where you output devices. I mean, I'm not asking you to go all the way back to
Ruby Lith.
horizontal copy cameras and
It's a
Amberlith or
direct-to-screen.
Ruby Lith.
Oh, we had a stack camera.
Right, because I've done those things, But just sort of like, the evolution of outputting separations
All
and
right,
what
so
you use today.
All right, so the question is basically on output devices for actually when you have the art, especially halftone art, what do you do with it? So we have a Douthit direct-to-screen unit. There's a lot of them on the market. I like that because of the service that we get. The most advanced thing, if you want to start with the most advanced, is the new lasers. Kiwo has one and Saudi has a laser. They're both out in the field now for a while, so you're not a guinea pig using those. They've proven themselves. There are a lot of people still use film,
I still use film, mainly because I can't afford one of those yet.
Yeah, I would. SPSI, I know, is a distributor that sells a whole system that goes with Epson printers. That works really well and is a very affordable thing. Their RIP and their film and the ink. If you're going to do that, I would use the ink that's not water soluble. You can cheap out on that, but you're going to suffer. People use vellum still. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right? And there's tricks with vellum. You can use multiple sheets sometimes. Vellum works fine with the right light source and particularly things without a lot of halftones. This is where customer service comes in. If you can't hold under a certain line type, tell them not to do that. Like, if you can't hold certain halftones or certain gradations, better to turn the customer away from that. A lot of art and production can be dealt with in customer service. So that's sort of the genesis of how things went in reverse order. They've really become affordable. The direct-to-screen units are not the tremendous expense that they once were. And I actually, one show I kind of asked all the printers around, like, if you could have invested in something sooner, what would you have invested in? And direct-to-screen was really the most common answer that I got.
What is what's the range of the cost of a unit? And I know there's varying degrees.
I think it might be like 35 to 75.
Yeah, I looked at the Saudi one today as 100.
Yeah, so you don't.
The laser's 100.
Just to keep track of files versus to keep track of actual physical films is like a game changer. I'm a big believer in momentum, and nothing kills your momentum like, where's the fucking film? Like, and you're like, I don't know. I think we put it here.
Or if
Did
it
you put it
melted
away?
on the
Who didn't
press?
put it away? This or that. And whereas you can search for it and bring it back up to your unit, it's like unbelievable. We also had just envelope upon envelope of films. It just took up half our damn factory, and now we have nothing. It's on the cloud. So that was kind of a game changer for us. You definitely want to look at that as soon as you can afford it. Sometimes you can finance and it's worth it, And film isn't free, And it almost always fits. Film, if you don't output it right, it's not going to fit together. You have to do them the same direction on a lot of printers, or else it will. The one thing I'll vote against is thermo printers. The technology is such that the film will shrink or expand depending on how much black ink you put down, and it tries to compensate for that, and it's just a bad system and expensive. Stay away from thermal. There you go. Never have a thermal sponsor here ever, will we?
Where do you have in your shop? Do you have in-house artists? Or
We
do you
have
do
we have
contract
in-house artists, and we're in Pawtucket, and she is in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
And then our other artists that work with us, not full time, one is in South Carolina and one is in Texas. Do not be afraid of not having your artist in your shop.
Yeah.
And in fact, we found that our production artist suddenly got a lot more done when she wasn't the smartest computer person in the building.
yeah.
Like, I can't open this PDF, and like all this kind of stuff went away, and she just does art.
Yeah, I recently started using an art service, GraphSource. I'll give Lucas and Nick a shout out at GraphSource.
Yeah, so
but,
we had a speaker yesterday, Seps.io also.
Yeah.
That's another one. That's an option for having your art done.
Yeah. So
Other questions about art, production, life? Actually, one thing we didn't talk about also now, more than ever, you also have to decide how you're going to decorate something. So, we're won every award for screen printing there is, but we use transfers, DTG, pad printing.
Let's talk about Puff for a minute, because both of us have been in the business long enough to remember like bum equipment and Puff being all the rage, like back in the
It's the rage
late
again.
80s, early right. So why is that? First of all,
I don't know. People are crazy, So, so Puff's back in, like Howard, Stalls,
613
FM
or-
Expressions, all
Yeah.
613 all have
Yeah.
great Puff products. So if you have trouble printing Puff, now you have an option for that. No one ever wanted to print hats, and now you can get a Puff transfer for a hat. And if you use one of the, I don't mind shouting out, Stalls has a great hat transfer press that it works great on that because you can use less pressure, has heat from the bottom, and to apply those Puff transfers to hats has never been easier. We do a ton of embroidery. We have 30 heads or something. We buy transfers that look embroidered now sometimes. It's a more cost-effective way to do it. So you got to really learn. That's why it's great to come to these shows, see all the options for transfers, for example, because that's the best way to go a lot of times when someone has a piece of art.
what advice would you have for someone who's maybe here today who's starting out in the industry? Because this show, obviously there's always a lot of new people, new folks getting into the industry. And what advice would you have besides don't do it?
Well, it's close to don't do it. Actually, there was someone here a couple of years ago, a friend that had worked at a big factory, screen printing, and he wanted to start his own shop in his garage and basement, and we talked him out of it, actually. So the hard part about the business is the sales and marketing, not the production. And if you buy a good quality heat press and you have a good supplier, if you use like the vintage transfers of FM Expressions or the vintage one of Howard, they look just like a screen print. They do. And then you can concentrate on selling and not production. And it's a great way to start. What? Oh, yeah. Like if people don't like the word transfer, I call them indirect prints.
I like it.
We have a question back here?
Yes, I do. So I do embroidery in-house, and I sub out all my screen printing.
Smart woman.
I've been doing this for over 25 years.
Oh, you've been smart a long time, even.
So the graphics that I send out is called Spot Color. I'm curious to know, how do you create a full front logo without it feeling so plastic? You use a lot of halftones. It's still vectorized, but today I learned something about water-based inks have a different feel than plastisol.
Not always.
So what do I say to my printer? And I say, listen, I want this shirt to be soft. I just did a classic car. It's beautiful graphically, but screen print wise, it came out very thick, and my customer liked it, but I didn't.
All right, so that is a great question.
What terminology can I use with my screen printer to say, I want this in water-based, or
Okay.
what do I do?
All right, let's take it back first. That's one reason I did this seminar, art direction would come first. So the very first thing is when you're creating the art, or when you're speaking to the artist who's going to create the art, if you're not creating it, it's to use the grounds, use the shirt background within the image as much as possible. Nothing will make it softer than to use the shirt as the background. So that might be the shirt selection. If it's going to be black in the background, pick some dominant color either in the background or in the image that's going to be the shirt, and that is the key thing first of all. After that, a couple of things. You know, we have people ask for water-based ink sometimes. They don't know what they're talking about, so you have to grill them. Is it like an ecological thing? You plan on drinking the ink or whatever? Or is it like you want it soft? Because there are soft hand additives to plastisol. They have some trade-off on washability, but there's that. The other is, you know, your printer may not be able to handle it, but some printers print softer. So we have the kind of presses, these Austrian presses called MHMs. They're super level forever and super parallel. And so you can lay a very thin sheet of ink down and get good coverage. Other presses that are a little off, you have to push more ink through to make sure you hit the low points and the high points. So certain printers can get a softer effect. Then the other thing is, if you pick a cotton shirt, you can use a discharge ink, like that one shirt I sent around. That's a water-based product. It's not particularly ecological, actually, but it's soft. So discharge ink takes the dye that's in the shirt and neutralizes it. It's almost like a bleaching agent, and it turns it back to the original color of the shirt, so an off-white. And there's also white discharge, which has pigment in it afterwards. Certain shirts discharge and certain don't. It's not a quality issue, it's like a hand and glove issue. So you would ask for discharge printing, but it has to be the right shirt. Some companies like Bella, I know, have a chart of the dischargeability. Some other ones, if you ask the reps, they happen to know. Sometimes you have to test it. So that then takes away that underprint, and that's going to make it soft in the first place. If it's on a white shirt, it's always going to be softer, and then I guess you add more halftones would make it softer. But
So that shirt that you passed around, the black shirt with the full back logo, I don't know where it is, but how many colors was that?
I'm sorry, which one was it? You mean the one with the orange and white? The orange and white one was just 2. There's no under white.
Yeah, the one that lady has.
Oh, this one?
Oh, no, sorry. It had,
That one?
There it is. Yeah.
That one's discharge.
there it is. It's
That
called
one's discharge. Yeah, it's a really beautiful name for it, isn't it? I want discharge ink.
But that fills up the whole shirt. I understand the thing about using the shirt color as part of the design. I've always done that. But it has a nice soft feel, and it doesn't.
There's no because there's no
There's no pigment. There's
Yeah.
no vinyl, basically, which is all
so
that
there are some things to
plastisol.
know when you're going to use discharge, though. So one thing, the color matching is nearly impossible. It's when you mix up discharge ink and you print it, it looks like nothing. It look like that orange would look like this dull, wet, like dull orangey water on it. When it goes to the dryer, what happens is that the ink has a discharge agent, a catalyst in it. So the catalyst and the ink and heat and water together cause the dye to be neutralized. So you don't know what color it is till it gets out and cools down. So it's real hard to mix colors perfectly. So keep that in mind, that you do not want to have a fussy person about their logo color do discharge ink. The other is because it doesn't really show up till after. If you have a pinhole in your screen, small like piece of dirt or something, you don't see it till it's at the end of the dryer. So you might print the whole press full and you're unloading them, you don't see it because it looks like a drop of water. And then it goes through and it turns white. So the people have to live with very small pinholes, or at least we make our customers live with that.
So that's a 2-color print then?
Yes, it's not 3. If we use
Really?
plastisol, it would be 3. That was 2 colors. The The other is that not everybody can do it. So a lot of people try it. You can't use a short dryer, like it won't really work very well. Has to be like a longer. It's like baking a cake. You know, you can bake it at
Low and slow.
350 for an hour, but it doesn't mean you can turn it up to 600 for 5 minutes and get it done. You can't do that with discharge either. So they have to have the right equipment. And it also is very aggressive on your screens. So you really need someone that specializes in it, or at least it's one of their specialties, because you have to have the right screens. There's the difficulty in color matching. And then it's a little more expensive. One is because of all those difficulties. The other is after you mix it up, in 6 hours, you have to throw it out. It doesn't have a long, what's called pot life. So there's a lot of things to know about it, actually. That's why we're saying when someone knows about screen printing and they're doing the art, it would be a lot easier to come up with something like that.
And transfers might be a
Thank
good
you.
option for you now, because some of these, like if you got a Supercolor, shout out to Supercolor. There's a lot of good transfer companies here. They feel so soft compared to what transfers used to feel like. They used to feel like a piece of plastic. Some of them are so good now, the water-based ones.
But they're shiny.
They are.
They are shinier.
Yeah.
So there's ways to dull them, actually. There's you can throw them through a dryer, actually, sometimes, and they will dull up a little bit. But you do have to be aware that not everyone likes that shiny look, and you would have to show your customer. It's a great option for full color, though. I know, I think Howard just came out with one. Stahls has full color transfers. FM Expressions does. Supercolor is a good example. All theirs are full color, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure. No, those are great questions. Thank you so much. Other questions about art and T-shirts? Up here, Pammy.
Do you have any specific program recommendations for someone coming from hand
Can't
painting
hear
it?
you.
I think
Okay.
that the question
Okay.
is, do we have
The-
recommendations for specific programs to do the art?
Yeah, for someone coming from, so I like hand paint everything. So now I want to digitize.
Oh, you're a
the
real
things
artist, not
that
like
I
us.
Hand paint. Yeah, so I want to digitize it, but I've tried kind of like taking a picture of the actual garment, opening up in like Procreate, for example, and then, you know, adding a layer and writing over it. But the resolution it doesn't come out as high res as it's supposed to be to turn into a transfer.
All right. So you've got art that you created by hand and you want to get it on a T-shirt. That's not easy. Well, the short answer is that you can send it to any number of companies that will do it overseas for a very small amount of money. They used to, and you know what? It's not like American jobs are going over there. They're gone. Like you cannot. I used to try to get people to do it here. They don't want to do it. They probably use some kind of program that aids in it, and then the rest is by hand. And you can get your stuff digitized for embroidery or vectorized for printing by any number of companies. And ask people for recommendations, I would say. And then beyond that, seems like a common thing that they do is give you an ace person to begin with, and then they give you a junior person, and the quality might go down, and you have to complain about it, and it goes back up. But a lot of them are in Asia. Actually, some are in Central America, but the Asian ones actually do it overnight because of the time difference. So it's done very quickly, and I wish I could tell you one that I know was ethical and paid their people well. I haven't been able to determine that, but it is a way to do it. Okay.
Yeah, they basically redraw and digitize, to your point. They just take your image and digitize it. A lot of times that just means they're just retracing or redrawing your artwork and digitizing
There is
it.
no magic program, no. Good question. Thanks. Other questions about art? About art, as we say? Where I come from? Art. All right, well, I'll be around all day today and tomorrow. If you have other questions, I can refer you to other people if I don't know the answer. How about a hand? Thanks for Tim Gibson stepping in here at the last
Thanks.
minute. I want to thank our
Thank
sponsors,
you.
Los Angeles Apparel and Alpha Stalls, Transfer Express, LAT Apparel, Lane 7, Howard and Hirsch all make all this possible for free. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. Check out our YouTube channel at inkitchen.com. And we got posters for sale. Check them out. We're doing them old school hand printing over here, and all the money goes to Adelaide's Place, which is a women's shelter here in Atlantic City that on a shoestring or maybe even half a shoestring does some great work with homeless folks here in Atlantic City, which is a big problem. And it's a cool poster. And if you haven't seen Lucy and you drove here, if you drive about a mile down to Margate, that giant wooden elephant is by the beach. It comes from the 1800s, I think. So check it out.